Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. I apologize for being somewhat random with my upload schedule and having not uploaded in a few months. I apologize for not putting out another video. I've just been somewhat overwhelmed with school and college, etc. So in today's video, I want to somewhat use the impeachment trial as a primer for what I'm going to talk about in this video. And if you clicked on it, it is a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump if Donald Trump is the prospective nominee in 2024, which is looking like it certainly is possible. So, again, I wanted to wait and put this out until the impeachment vote. I'm going to somewhat stay out of that, but obviously Donald Trump has been acquitted in the Senate by a 57-43 vote. Again, you needed at least two-thirds, so 67 of the 100 United States senators to vote to actually convict Donald Trump. So he is certainly eligible to run for another term. If he wins a primary, then again, he'll be the candidate for the Republican ticket. Not impossible for that to happen. I would say it's more likely than not that Donald Trump is the prospective nominee. Now, in terms of Joe Biden being the nominee, that might be a little more shaky considering by the time he finishes his term, he's going to be, 82, 83, and the likelihood of him being in the mental state or even the physical state of running for another term in his mid 80s is very unlikely. So, again, this is just a potential matchup if Joe Biden were to be the nominee. Again, not necessarily likely, as he stated in the campaign during the campaign trail that he's likely to, run one term, and his job, I guess, was to defeat Donald Trump, which obviously he was successful. But let's just say hypothetically that he is the nominee and Donald Trump as well. So it'll be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump for another time in 2024. So starting off, I'd like to look at Joe Biden's approval rating, right? Joe Biden is hitting numbers that Donald Trump simply never hit. Right, Donald Trump was one of the most consistent and steady. He had one of the most consistent and steady disapprovals out of anyone in United States history. Again, not necessarily as he ended his term as more disapproved than Jimmy Carter, but throughout the duration of his term, he kind of hovered between the 42 to 45%. It was only after the insurrection at the Capitol that approval dropped to around 28 to 29% in the aggregate of polling. So looking at Joe Biden right now, we see 54.4% of the nation approves, 37.2% disapprove. Now again, this is kind of like the Goldilocks time period for presidents in that they're not necessarily being held accountable for much. It's only his first few weeks, his first month. And during that first 3 to 5 months, potentially Joe Biden's approval rating might be slightly higher because, again, he's essentially trying to undo what he sees as the damage that Donald Trump has done to the country. And he hasn't necessarily been in office too much. So there's not much blame put on him for many of the significant issues yet. And we will see that escalate throughout the next few months and certainly throughout the next few years. So moving into this, we see Joe Biden is popular. Joe Biden is significantly favorable, a 17.2 point gap. And really, throughout his entire term, starting from January 20th, he has been relatively stable. Around 53 to 55% of the country approve of him. This might change. But at this point, I don't necessarily see any reason for it to, right? If he's able to improve the COVID situation, get it under control, and kind of take that with him into the midterms, take it in for another term potentially, having that on his back of defeating a global pandemic as well as recovering the economy, if that's how it works. He's going to be in extremely good position as an incumbent presidency. Again, he has the incumbency behind him. That's extremely powerful. And he was able to defeat an incumbent president, Donald Trump, who was one of the first set of three since George W. Bush, to lose their reelection bid since 1988. So again, Donald Trump proves that he's not necessarily a viable candidate, considering he has never been in terms of approval rating, he's never been approved of. His highest was around 49%, and some polls had his handling of the economy above 50%. And that's one of the major issues that Donald Trump actually leads in polling, is actually dealing with the economy. And we saw a lot of his voters in 2020 say that their main priority in exit polls was rebuilding the economy instead of actually trying to contain the COVID situation. Now, that's separate, but if Donald Trump is able to take that coalition, if he still has somewhat strong support within the 80 to 90% of Republicans, it is certainly possible that he will win the nomination. Certainly possible that he has a chance of winning another term. Now, again, that is shaky considering his approval rating and considering his handling of the presidency in the last few months, having to deal with a lot of criminal activity. And there are certainly things that could disqualify Donald Trump from running for another term if he's held criminally accountable for some of his actions. For example, the insurrection at the Capitol, if he is sought after against that, or his phone call with the Secretary of State of Georgia, where essentially he threatened Secretary Raffensperger. But again, that's not necessarily the point of this video. But there are a number of things that certainly can affect Donald Trump's term or his potential prospects of running, depending on what happens within the course of the next few years. So actually moving into this electoral map, Joe Biden is coming into a position where he is actually stronger than he did in 2016, or 2020. My apologies. Um, so he's in a stronger position than he was as an incumbent. He got 306 electoral votes. Again, I was expecting him to get around about 290. There's this idea of a 248 electoral vote firewall. The idea that Donald Trump would carry every Sun Belt state, so that would be Texas, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, and Joe Biden would win Arizona and the Rust Belt and Virginia, and that is perfectly conceivable, and that's what I thought would happen in 2020. Now, the only thing that I got wrong was Georgia flipped Democratic, which certainly was a surprise to me considering how strongly Florida leaned towards Donald Trump. But again, we might see something similar shake out in 2020. So let's just start off with the solid states for both candidates. Solid states for Donald Trump would most likely be Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. These plain states, not really going to be competitive ever. We see marginal shifts potentially, but nothing that's, these are still going to be 30 or 40 point Trump victories. He's extremely popular here. Moving forward would be Nebraska at large, would be safe. Nebraska's second district, I'm sorry, not Nebraska's second district would not be safe. My apologies. Nebraska's third district would be safe for Donald Trump. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Missouri. These are likely all of Donald Trump's safe states. Again, I'm saying Joe Biden's coming in as a stronger candidate than he was in 2020 or 2020. So again, if he's coming in as a stronger, more viable candidate, a lot of these states that are on the board right now may change from safe for Trump to likely for Trump, likely to lean to tilt. It's just how it works. If Joe Biden's in a stronger position as a candidate, he's going to be more competitive and be able to win more states. That doesn't mean Donald Trump won't hold a number of them. It might mean that they might become more competitive. And we see a lot of these Sun Belt states, such as Georgia and Texas, become much more within reach for Democrats. So moving into Joe Biden's safe states, I would say Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, and one change that I will be making from my 2020 projection was Colorado certainly is going to be safe. Right, we saw Joe Biden win here by around 14.5 points. So I thought he would win by 8 or 9. He ended up defying those expectations. John Hickenlooper even won by around 10 points. This has become a safe blue Democratic state, no question. In this matchup, I think Joe Biden would probably be winning by around 17 or 18 points in the state of Colorado. Moving forward, Illinois would be safe, as well as Virginia. Virginia was around 10 points for Joe Biden. I think this would probably be around 15. Every 4 years, Virginia is actually voting left of the national popular vote. It voted around 5 points to the left of the nation, right? Joe Biden won by around 4.5 points nationally, around 7 million votes. So voted around 5.5 points to the left of the nation. Moving forward, again, most of these Northeast states are going to be very solid for Joe Biden. Um, and Maine's first district as well is going to be safe. So right now, what do we see? We see that Joe Biden's at 205. So it is extremely easy for Joe Biden to reach the number that Mitt Romney in 2012 notably ended with, right? All he would need is something like Nebraska's second district or even just Nebraska at large, and he's over that 206. So it has shown you that the map, as the country has become more democratic, it's much easier for the Democrats to break that 200 barrier and much easier for them to realistically only have to pick off a few states to win, right? And I think that Joe Biden is going to be in a stronger position. Now, depending on exactly how everything shakes out with Donald Trump, he might be more or less competitive in a number of these states. But moving forward into the likely states, let's go to Donald Trump's likely states. He won Utah by around 20 points. I think that this will probably be around a 14 to 15 point victory right on the edge. I'm going to be giving that as likely to Donald Trump. As well, Montana was around 17 points going towards Donald Trump. I would see this probably as around a 10-point victory. Again, um, I would think that because nationally Joe Biden is very popular, he has a strong approval rating. Donald Trump will fare worse in a number of these states, even if he's going to be winning them. He's going to be winning them by considerably smaller margins. So if it's 14 or 15 in Utah, it could be 13 or 10 to 13 in Montana, as I was saying. So I'm going to be giving that as likely. Kansas was already likely, right? If we look back at the results, surprisingly, even though states like Indiana went safe for Donald Trump, Kansas was around 14.6 points, right? So this was, again, barely a likely state, but it still was. So I would expect this to also drop within probably around 10 points. So it would stay likely, certainly, but it might narrow. So, and we also saw a similar dynamic within the Senate race there with Barbara Boyer um, losing by around 8 to 10 points. I forgot exactly the exact figure, but she lost by a considerable amount. But certainly Kansas is somewhat more competitive than some of these other states like Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. Moving forward, likely states for Donald Trump. Surprisingly enough, Iowa and Ohio, I believe, are likely. Donald Trump would carry these by around 5 to 6 points in my projection. Again, these have become pretty reliable Republican states, right? Even though these were bellwether for a very long time, tend to vote together. Even though Donald Trump lost by a pretty healthy margin, 306 to 232, when he lost by around 7 million votes, he was holding on to Iowa and Ohio by around 8 points, right? About 8.2 points in Iowa and around 8.1 points in Ohio, right? So these states have become pretty Republican, right? Even more so than Texas. Texas is seen as one of the most conservative states. Donald Trump only carried Texas by around 5.6 points, right? So the idea that Iowa and Ohio are voting to the right, certainly he has tremendous popularity here, and he would be holding these by a smaller margin, but still winning Iowa and Ohio. Again, for Donald Trump, Nebraska's first district would be likely. This was, I believe, around a 17 or 18 point victory, so it was still safe for Donald Trump, but I think it will drop below that safe into a likely margin. Similarly, Indiana, around 16 points. Again, still a very conservative state, but Donald Trump is still very, very unpopular. And if he's on the ballot again, states that are generally more safe will become likely. And we'll see a similar dynamic in a lot of swing states with lean and tilt. Moving forward, Alaska. Alaska was around a 10-point victory, I believe. Yes, 52.8 to 42.8. So Alaska has been trending, certainly, in a democratic direction. Not to say this will ever become a liberal, blue state, but certainly it is a lot more competitive than a number of these states. 10 points might become 7 or 6. It might actually fall below certain states like Iowa and Ohio that are 8-point Trump states. So I think I'm going to be giving this as likely, but still likely to lean for a state like Alaska, which just shows you how much trouble Donald Trump is on this map, if he is barely holding a state such as Alaska that went 25 points to Mitt Romney and John McCain when they were on the ballot, right? So moving forward into the state of South Carolina, I think this will still be likely. I believe Donald Trump carried it by around 11.7 points. So this was certainly below the 15-point threshold to be a safe state. I think it'll probably be around a 7 or 8 point victory for Donald Trump here. So certainly degrading support, and that would be likely. So I believe I hit all of Donald Trump's likely states. Perhaps he wins Maine second by a likely margin. I'll be giving it to him as likely just because I think he'll win by around 5 points. He carried it by around 7 or 8 this election cycle, so I believe that he certainly has support in this district. I'm going to be giving it to him as likely for Donald Trump. So moving into the rest of the map, right, we see 205 safe states for Joe Biden and 150 electoral votes for likely and safe states. So it shows you how much trouble Donald Trump is, because if you factor in some of these very likely states, such as Minnesota for Joe Biden, New Hampshire, which he carried by a bigger margin than I expected, by 7 or 8 points, right? So 7.3 points. So again, a much better margin for Joe Biden in New Hampshire because of his poor performance in the 2020 primaries. I thought it would be more competitive, but New Hampshire is going to be a likely state, certainly. Moving into the rest of the map, New Mexico is going to be likely for Joe Biden. And I believe Maine at large would also be likely. So these would be Joe Biden's likely states. So we see him almost at Hillary Clinton's number, just factoring in safe and likely states, which means he certainly is very competitive within the rest of this map. Moving forward, I see really any state that Joe Biden. Oh, I apologize. Nebraska's second district, I'm giving as likely. Right, this is suburban Omaha. This is a district that Democrats were very bullish on in 2020 because they saw that the demographics, a high African American turnout. This has certainly been, and Joe Biden was able to win here by around 7 points. Certainly, he's going to be improving on that margin if Donald Trump is the nominee. So that's going to be second district to Joe Biden. So that puts him at 227 to Donald Trump at 150. Now we are going to go to lean and tilt states. So for Donald Trump's lean states at this point, I would see probably one on the map, and this is certainly one that, if anyone's watching, would predict, would be Texas. Texas, I think, would be lean. Donald Trump carried it by around 52, by around 5 points. And looking at the state itself, right, it's somewhat the dynamic that we see in the rest of the country, right? Donald Trump does extremely well in rural America. Turns out a lot of these lunch bucket workers come out for Donald Trump. However, he suffers in the cities and the major urban centers, right? Even Fort Worth, Tarrant County. Joe Biden narrowly won here. Houston, Joe Biden's winning by around 13 points. Even though he didn't do as well as Beto O'Rourke did in something like El Paso, and the rest of the state as a whole, certainly with the suburban revolt as well as the cities in Texas becoming much more democratic, we certainly can see this drop into a lean margin, probably around 3 to 4 points, potentially even 1 or 2. It certainly won't be a tilt margin. That could be in 2028 or 2032. But certainly the suburban revolt that we see in a number of these states, as well as the changing demographics, which with higher Latino numbers, and that was something that Joe Biden really suffered with, right? In a state like Florida, when we look at the size of the lead, the shift, right? A lot of these heavy Latino areas, Joe Biden suffered in, right? Donald Trump painted him as a socialist, as a Marxist, and perhaps that will work again. But there was a similar dynamic in the state like Texas, right? A lot of these southern the southern region of Texas, which has a much higher population of Latinos, and is much more diverse, trended. Look at this: Kennedy County voted 40 points. It's a tiny county, but this is a trend that we see in a lot of these major Latino areas. And so if Donald Trump is able to appeal to Latinos the same way that he did in 2020, perhaps maybe he can make up for some of that, for some of the suburban revolt against him. And that's kind of what we saw. So again, Donald Trump needs to find ways to make up for the suburban revolt, the urban revolt against him. And I don't necessarily see that happening in a state like Texas, sure, but nationwide won't be enough to help him get across the finish line. Moving forward into another lean state. Lean state, I think, would be Florida, now that we were talking about it. Again, this would probably be around 2 to 3 points instead of 3.5. But, Donald Trump was able to win here by 3.3 points in Florida. And the main reason for this would be Miami-Dade, where Joe Biden had a terrible performance, 53%. Joe Biden is not very popular amongst the Latino community. Yes, he is extremely popular amongst suburban women, amongst African Americans, amongst working class, the college educated vote. He does very well. But in Latino Cuban communities, Donald Trump is extremely popular, and that type of margin, even if it's 53 to 46, again, Joe Biden did better in Duval County. He won Pinellas County. A lot of these, Seminole County, these were somewhat three counties that, even though Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson lost in 2018, the midterms, these were three counties that Donald Trump carried in 2016 that flipped, right? So Seminole, Pinellas, and Duval. There simply just isn't enough vote, even if Joe Biden's able to improve in some of these southern counties, as well as in some of the cities. There simply isn't enough to make up the biggest county in the state with, 1.2 million people voting. And his performance was not great either in Broward or Palm Beach. I think this is certainly going to be around a 2 to 3 point victory for Donald Trump. Now, moving into the rest of the map, we have 227 to 217. Now, we haven't gotten to Joe Biden's lean states. Joe Biden's lean states would be Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Again, these were states that he carried. Michigan was his most solid victory. He won by around 155,000 votes, 51 to 48 if you round up. It was about a 3-point race. Again, I think he might improve on that, potentially maybe in a 4 to 5 point margin. And as well, this was his most solid victory, which is what I was predicting. And I predicted Pennsylvania would be next in line. Joe Biden carried it actually by a smaller margin than I expected. But again, even if Joe Biden is the president, that suburban revolt, suburban women are not going to necessarily forget about Donald Trump. If he's on the ballot, they are going to come out and vote against him. And that's exactly what they did in Pennsylvania. That's exactly what they did across the nation. So again, this state would probably be around a 3 to 4 point victory versus a 1.2 points. Again, Donald Trump defied the odds and actually came relatively close to winning another term. But this would likely be around a 3 to 4 point victory. On the other hand, the reason why I mentioned 2 to 3 points is Wisconsin would probably be a 2 to 3 point victory. Again, Joe Biden had a very solid lead here in terms of polling. He only won by around 20,000 votes, which is the same margin that Donald Trump was able to win the state. Again, because he's on the ticket, because he's an incumbent, because he already defeated this president. I think he is going to improve on the margin, potentially even win counties such as Winnebago and Kenosha. Again, very, very close. But I see this map potentially changing a little bit and actually helping out Joe Biden in a state like Wisconsin would probably be around a 2 to 3 point victory. So I'm sorry, I didn't include it. Wisconsin would be lean. So Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada would be lean states. Again, Wisconsin would be the only notable shift. This map is essentially holding to form. If you change Indiana to safe and Texas to likely, the map is holding to form. However, this is where it would likely change, which would be in the rest of the map. So we have North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. But Georgia and Arizona, two states that Joe Biden flipped. Arizona, I was certainly expecting him to. And Georgia, I thought it was going to be very, very close, and Donald Trump would edge it out, but I was wrong. Joe Biden actually ended up winning, despite Donald Trump's claims of election fraud that certainly played badly within this state. But moving forward, Arizona, I see as a tilt margin. Again, this might be under 1 point, but Joe Biden was able to win here um, by around zero point 0.3 points. Now, one of the major factors was John McCain. Again, he very beloved in this state, and Joe Biden was able to win here very narrowly. Now, will Arizona will remember necessarily the comments that Donald Trump made about John McCain, 9 years after he was president, right? He made comments about John McCain in around 2015. Now, potentially, if someone like Sidney McCain, the widow of John McCain, endorses Joe Biden, then potentially we might see him improve his margin. But again, suburban Phoenix, Maricopa County with nearly 60% of the vote, 2 million just alone in this county. We certainly can see Joe Biden improve, probably have around a 50,000 vote victory, I would think, instead of a 10,000 vote victory. So I'm going to be giving that as a tilt state. And similarly, Georgia with the Senate runoffs. This state is certainly becoming much more competitive. Now, again, David Perdue, Kelly Loeffler, not necessarily the most popular Republican candidates. Again, Kelly Loeffler didn't even win her race. She was appointed by the governor, and David Perdue was won his race, but was not necessarily as popular. And the fact that Warnock and Ossoff both won indicates to me that the suburban revolt, Georgia, DeKalb County, a lot of these Gwinnett County, many of these Atlanta suburbs are really becoming the decider. And I think that they will become even more blue over the next few years, which I'm going to be giving this still as a tilt state, probably around a 0.7% victory, I would say. So Joe Biden would improve, probably win by around 20,000 votes. Now, the only difference that I see here on this map, on the remainder of this map, would be North Carolina. Instead of having that as a lean to Donald Trump, which is what he had in 2016, I'm going to be giving that as a tilt to Joe Biden, right? So Donald Trump was able to win here by around 75,000 votes. So it certainly is possible that Joe Biden only lost by around a point in this state. And with his approval rating so high, and if he comes into the election with that type of approval, then potentially a state like North Carolina, which again went to Donald Trump, but by a very small margin, a much smaller margin than he won by in 2016. Again, this certainly can go to Joe Biden if he improves. Again, Charlotte, Raleigh, he did incredibly well in many of these cities in the suburbs. Again, 67% of the vote in Mecklenburg, 62% in Wake. If he improves those numbers slightly and eats into some of these conservative counties, it certainly is possible as an incumbent presidency, having that behind him can certainly help improve his chances at winning North Carolina. And for that reason, I'm going to be giving it as a tilt. It might be a similar margin to 2008 Obama, where he won by around 20,000. But again, it's still significant that Joe Biden will win North Carolina and go around 321 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 217 electoral votes. So I know this video was long. I apologize. I just want to put out a video that I thought you guys would enjoy. If you have any criticism, anything you want to mention, any video ideas, I'm going to try and be more active in posting. So if there's anything that you guys would like to see, make sure to put it down in the comment section below. I'll read everything and I will respond. Thank you guys so much. Hope you have a wonderful President's Day, and I'll see you in the next one.